Batman Gotham's Night Number 2. Silence of the Iceberg. Sirens tore through the night like wounded animals. Red and blue lights splashed across wet rooftops as Batman ran, boots striking concrete in a steady, punishing rhythm. The GCPD had been closer than he'd anticipated. Too close. A busted smuggling ring, a few broken ribs, and one terrified accountant left gift-wrapped on a patrol car had been enough to draw half the precinct into the Narrows. Batman, stop where you are. He didn't slow. Bullets sparked off brick as he vaulted a fire escape, cape snapping behind him like a living thing. A helicopter swept overhead, its spotlight cutting through the rain. For a heartbeat, it caught him mid-leap. Black against white, myth made real. Batman hit the roof hard, rolled and vanished. He moved through Gotham the way blood moved through veins. Hidden, essential, unstoppable. Grapnel fired. Line went taut. He swung across an alley just as squad cars screeched below. Cops piling out with guns raised, shouting at shadows that were already gone. Batman dropped into darkness, landing in a flooded maintenance tunnel beneath the streets. He didn't stop running until the sirens faded into the distance, until Gotham's breath steadied again. The police were learning his patterns. So was he. Oswald Cobblepot's gun trade went down at the docks 2 nights later. The deal was supposed to be quiet, shipping containers stacked like steel tombstones, cranes looming overhead like skeletal giants. Crates marked as frozen seafood hid military-grade rifles, armor-piercing rounds, and enough firepower to arm a small war. Penguin liked irony. He liked hiding death under ice. Batman watched from above, perched on a crane arm, counting men. 12 guards, automatic weapons. Disciplined. Too disciplined for street muscle. Cobblepot's reach was growing. Batman dropped. The first man went down without a sound, dragged into shadow before his scream could escape. The second turned just in time to see white eyes in the dark. Batman broke his arm and took his rifle in the same motion, using it to knock out the third. Chaos followed. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes lighting up the docks like a stuttering heartbeat. Batman moved through it, a blur of black and violence. He disarmed, disabled, destroyed. Men hit the ground hard and stayed there, groaning, whimpering, praying. One tried to run. Batman caught him by the collar and slammed him against a container, steel ringing with the impact. "Cobblepot," Batman growled. "Where is he?" The man spat blood, teeth already missing. He laughed, a short, broken sound. "We don't talk," he said. "That's the deal." Batman tightened his grip. "You're bleeding for him." The man's eyes flicked, afraid, but stubborn. "Better you than him." Batman knocked him out. By the time the police arrived, the docks were a graveyard of broken weapons and unconscious bodies. The guns were gone, destroyed, dumped into the bay, rendered useless. Penguin's operation had been hit hard, but Cobblepot himself remained untouched. Batman interrogated the rest of them in the shadows as the night wore on. Every answer was the same. Silence, fear, loyalty bought with terror and money. Penguin had built something solid, an empire where even the lowest thug knew better than to talk. Batman stood alone at the edge of the docks as dawn threatened the horizon, watching the water churn where guns sank into black depths. The city felt heavier tonight. Cobblepot wasn't cracking. Somewhere uptown, behind bulletproof glass and velvet curtains, Oswald Cobblepot sipped his drink and smiled, already hearing about the Bat's latest disruption. He'd lost product. He'd lost men, but he hadn't lost control. Batman melted back into Gotham's shadows, jaw clenched, mind racing. He'd scared the streets, he'd rattled the mobs, but fear alone wasn't enough. Not anymore. The war for Gotham had begun, and the enemy wasn't talking. Swamp Thing Number 1, born of mud and memory. The swamp breathed at night. It wasn't imagination or fear. It was real, slow, and wet. The sound of water sliding through roots, of insects humming in ancient rhythms, of something old shifting beneath the surface. The Louisiana marsh stretched for miles, a living maze of cypress knees and hanging moss, a place where the world forgot itself. Alec Holland loved it anyway. He stood on the wooden walkway outside the research facility, notebook in hand, boots already caked in mud. The air was thick, warm, heavy with decay and life tangled together. This place was perfect. The swamp didn't waste anything. Death fed life. Life returned to soil. It was balance, raw, honest balance. Inside the lab, Linda Holland watched him through the window, smiling despite herself. "You're staring at it again?" she said as he came in. "I'm listening," Alec replied. "The swamp tells you things if you stop trying to dominate it." Linda shook her head and handed him a cup of coffee. "You sound like a poet, or a man who's been out here too long." Alec smiled. "If this works, Linda, if we can crack the biorestorative formula, it could change everything. Desertification, soil collapse, starving nations. We could make dead land live again." That was Alec Holland, brilliant, idealistic, painfully earnest. He believed science could heal the world if it was left in the right hands. That was the problem. The explosion came without warning. One moment, Alec was bent over his notes, adjusting a compound ratio, and the next, the lab was fire and noise and pressure ripping the air from his lungs. The blast threw him through the doors, flames clinging to his body like a second skin. He screamed, not from pain, but from shock, as instinct drove him forward, away from the fire, straight into the swamp. Alec hit the water hard, sinking beneath the surface as the flames hissed and died. Chemicals bled from his torn clothes, from shattered vials embedded in his flesh. He thrashed, lungs burning, mind unraveling. Mud filled his mouth. Darkness closed in. And then, stillness. The swamp received him. Time lost meaning. Something happened in the dark, something no equation could explain. Alec's body broke down, flesh dissolving into muck and rot, bones dissolving into mineral memory. The formula, unfinished, experimental, soaked into the swamp itself, rewriting rules older than humanity. The plants listened. Roots crept where veins once were, moss filled the shape of lungs, algae traced the echo of a heartbeat. The swamp learned Alec Holland, his thoughts, his fears, his love for Linda, his terror in those final seconds. And it answered. When the creature rose from the water days later, it did not know its name. It stood tall and misshapen, a towering mass of vines, bark, and muscle grown from peat and sorrow. Water poured from its shoulders. Its hands were thick with tendrils and leaves. Where a human face had been, there was only a rough suggestion, sunken eyes glowing faintly with something like awareness. It staggered through the swamp, driven by fragments of memory. A lab, fire, a woman screaming his name, Linda. The creature reached the remains of the facility at dawn. Police tape fluttered in the breeze. The lab was a blackened ruin. Men in hazmat suits moved cautiously, speaking in hushed tones. "There's nothing left of Holland," one said. Body was destroyed. The creature watched from the trees, a low, mournful sound rumbling from its chest. It tried to speak. The sound came out wrong, like wind through branches. Pain flared in its mind, sharp and alien. Soldiers arrived next, not police, not scientists. Men with orders and guns. They spoke of the formula, of weaponization, of ownership. One of them saw movement in the trees. "There!" he shouted. Gunfire tore into the swamp. The creature reacted without thinking. The swamp surged at its command. Vines snapping like whips, roots bursting from the ground, dragging men screaming into the mud. Bullets tore chunks from its body, but the wounds closed, filled by leaves and rot and growing things. When it was over, the swamp was quiet again. The creature stood alone, staring at its hands, horrified. It fled deeper into the marsh, hiding among ancient trees, trying to understand what it was. It remembered being a man. It remembered love, ambition, hope, but it no longer felt hunger, or breath, or pain the way it used to. The swamp spoke now, not in words, but in sensation. It showed the creature rot and rebirth, the endless cycle. It showed that it was not Alec Holland reborn. Alec Holland was dead. This thing was something else. A consciousness woven into plant matter. A guardian born of accident and grief. A memory wearing a body of green. Days later, Linda returned to the swamp alone, refusing to believe Alec was gone. She walked the paths he loved, calling his name through tears. The creature watched her from afar, heart aching despite not having one. "Alec," she whispered, "if you're here, please." The swamp stirred. The creature stepped forward, emerging slowly from the trees. Linda froze, terror flashing across her face. Then she saw its eyes. Recognition flickered. Not certainty, never that, but something deeper, something familiar. "Alec?" she breathed. The creature tried to answer. Vines trembled. The swamp held its breath. "I was," it finally rumbled, voice like earth shifting. "Alec is gone." Linda wept. The creature turned away, pain blooming like wildfire through the green. It could not return to her world. It belonged to the swamp now, to the places forgotten, poisoned, destroyed. As night fell, it vanished back into the marsh, standing silent among the trees as the swamp pulsed with life around it. Somewhere between man and monster, memory and myth, something new had been born. The swamp had a protector, and the world would come to fear the name Swamp Thing. Batman Gotham's Night number 3, The Cat and the Cowl. Batman stopped thinking about the Penguin the night the robberies began. They were clean. Too clean. No blood, no bodies, no panic. Just vaults opened, safes emptied, security systems humiliated, jewelry stores, private collections. One museum hit so quietly the guards didn't realize anything was missing until sunrise. This wasn't mob muscle. This was precision. Batman stood in the wreckage of the latest robbery as dawn crept through shattered skylights. Glass crunched under his boots as he moved, eyes scanning every angle, every surface. No forced entry, no sloppy mistakes. Whoever did this knew how to move through a room without being remembered. Then he saw the scratch marks, high up the wall, thin, deliberate, almost playful. Batman straightened. A soft sound came from above, fabric shifting, metal flexing. He looked up just in time to see a silhouette perched on a beam, balanced effortlessly, moonlight tracing the curve of a woman in a black catsuit. Goggles reflected his white eyes back at him. "Well," she purred, voice smooth as velvet, "you're not the night watchman." She moved before he could speak. Batman gave chase, launching himself upward, grappling lines snapping tight as she leapt from beam to beam like gravity was optional. She was fast, agile, laughing. They burst through a broken window into the open air, Gotham sprawling beneath them. She flipped onto a nearby rooftop, landing in a crouch, tail-like whip snapping behind her. "Who are you?" Batman demanded. She tilted her head. "You first." They collided, fist to forearm, kick to dodge, momentum carrying them across gravel and vents. She fought dirty, clever, always one step ahead. She wasn't trying to beat him. She was testing him. A gun clicked behind them. "Both of you, freeze." Batman turned slowly. Lieutenant James Gordon stood at the edge of the roof, trench coat flapping in the wind, gun steady but eyes sharp. He wasn't aiming at Batman. He was aiming at the woman. "She's on the GCPD wanted list," Gordon said. "Multiple burglaries, high-end targets, goes by cat." The woman sighed dramatically. "Wow, no imagination at all." Batman glanced at Gordon, just for a second, long enough for an understanding to pass between them. Gotham needed order. And this woman didn't belong to either of them. They moved together. Batman pressed from the front. Gordon cut off the exits. The woman darted, slid, flipped, always slipping through the smallest gaps. Batman grabbed her arm. She twisted, smiled, and pressed something into his palm. "Next time," she whispered. Smoke exploded between them. By the time it cleared, she was gone, vanished into the city like a rumor. Batman stood still, staring at what she'd left behind. A small metal charm shaped like a cat's head. Gordon lowered his gun. "She's good." "Yes," Batman said. "Too good." The next morning, the city gave her a name. Catwoman strikes again. The headlines screamed. Speculation ran wild. Vigilante, criminal, femme fatale. Gotham loved a mystery almost as much as it loved a monster. The celebration didn't last. Commissioner Gillian B. Loeb was found dead in his office before the ink dried on the papers. No signs of struggle. No witnesses. Just a single black umbrella left behind, open, dripping rainwater onto polished marble. A message. The Penguin didn't like surprises. The city braced for fallout, but it never came. Instead, Harvey Bullock, grizzled, stubborn, and louder than necessary, led a raid that same night. Penguin's hired killer didn't make it out in one piece. Bullock personally slapped the cuffs on what was left. For once, the system worked. A week later, James Gordon stood at a podium beneath harsh lights, jaw tight, voice steady. "Effective immediately," he said. "The GCPD will be working with Batman. This city is at war with crime, and we need every advantage we can get." Some officers applauded. Some scowled. Gotham shifted just slightly on its axis. That night, Bruce Wayne laughed. It was strange how unfamiliar the sound felt. He sat across from Selina Kyle in a candlelit restaurant overlooking the river, tuxedo perfect, smile effortless. Selina wore black, of course she did, elegant and dangerous all at once. Her eyes sparkled with mischief as she leaned forward. "So," she said, swirling her wine, "tell me, Bruce Wayne, are you always this charming or is this a special occasion?" Bruce met her gaze, something unreadable flickering beneath his mask of civility. "Only when I'm intrigued." She smiled like she knew something he didn't. Outside, Gotham burned quietly. Somewhere above the skyline, a bat watched the city. Somewhere in the shadows, a cat smiled to herself. And Bruce Wayne, billionaire vigilante liar, wondered which part of him Selina Kyle was really seeing. Green Arrow, The Emerald Archer #1, The Vertigo Hunt, Part 1. Star City liked to pretend it was cleaner than Gotham. The skyline was brighter, the suits were sharper, the crime wore better cologne and spoke in softer voices. But rot was rot, and Oliver Queen could smell it from a mile away. He stood on the edge of a glass tower downtown, emerald hood pulled low, bow resting comfortably in his hand. Traffic hummed far below, unaware. Somewhere in the city, a new drug was spreading, one that twisted balance, warped perception, and left its users shaking and broken. They called it vertigo, and every trail led to the same name. Count Vertigo. That was the problem. Names without faces were just smoke. Oliver loosed an arrow. It whistled through the night and snapped around a fleeing man's ankle, yanking him off his feet mid-stride. The dealer hit the pavement hard, crate of vials shattering beside him in a spray of neon green liquid. "Seriously," Oliver said as he dropped down beside him, boots crunching glass, "you guys ever consider yoga? Great for balance." The man groaned, clutching his head, eyes unfocused. I don't know anything, man. We just move it." "Funny," Oliver replied, notching another arrow and planting it inches from the man's face, "because that's exactly what everyone says right before they start talking." Minutes later, the dealer was zip-tied to a light post with a helpful note for the police and a splitting headache he'd remember every time it rained. Still no count. Oliver spent the night hunting shadows, a shipment at the docks, a lab hidden behind a wellness clinic, a nightclub basement packed with masked buyers swaying like they were underwater. Every time Vertigo showed up, Green Arrow followed the trail, and every time it stopped just short of the source. The suppliers fought harder than usual. Not desperate. Organized. Trained. That worried him. In an abandoned warehouse near the Glades, Green Arrow crashed through a skylight, scattering armed men mid-transaction. He moved fast, arrows flying in precise rhythm, hands pinned to walls, guns shattered, legs tangled. The drug hit the floor in crates marked with symbols Oliver didn't recognize. Not gang tags, not corporate logos, royal seals. Oliver frowned beneath the hood. "Okay," he muttered, kicking a crate open. "That's new." One of the men tried to inject himself with the drug, hand shaking violently. Oliver kicked the syringe away and slammed him into a pillar. "Who's funding this?" Oliver demanded. "Where's Vertigo?" The man laughed. High, unsteady, wrong. "You think he's here?" he slurred. "He doesn't get his hands dirty. He watches." "From where?" The man's smile widened, eyes spinning wildly. "From above." Sirens wailed in the distance. Oliver vanished before they arrived, melting back into the city's green glow. He regrouped on a rooftop, staring down at Star City, jaw clenched. Count Vertigo wasn't a street dealer. He wasn't even a kingpin. He was something worse, untouchable, protected, operating behind layers of money and influence. Every supply chain Oliver broke was replaced within days. Every arrest led nowhere. Someone wanted Star City dizzy, and they weren't done yet. As dawn crept over the horizon, Oliver fired one last arrow, embedding it into a billboard advertising balance therapy. The metal warped around the shaft, splitting the smiling model's face clean in two. "Enjoy the warm-up," Oliver said quietly, "because next time..." He pulled his hood tighter and stepped back into the shadows. "I'm aiming higher." To be continued. The Vertigo Hunt, Part 2. Batman, Gotham's Night number 4, Signal in the Dark. The Iceberg Lounge was all smoke, velvet, and lies. Bruce Wayne didn't walk through its doors. Matches Malone did. Scarred face, crooked grin, coat that smelled like cheap whiskey, and cheaper sins. Matches belonged here. Bruce didn't. That was the point. He sat at the bar, back to the room, glass untouched, eyes working through the mirror behind the shelves. Penguin's place was buzzing tonight. Dock bosses, gun runners, men who smiled too easily. Cobblepot himself held court in the back, waddling tables, laughing loud enough to be heard over the music. Nothing useful. Too careful. Too clean. Then Matches saw it, a flicker of light through the frosted windows. Just for a second, high above Gotham's skyline, a bat. Bruce stood immediately. "Hey, Malone," a voice called. "You ain't finished." Matches tossed a bill on the bar and kept walking. He didn't rush. He didn't run. He left like a man who knew when the temperature in a room had just changed. Minutes later, Bruce Wayne ceased to exist. Batman hit the rooftop opposite GCPD headquarters in a rush of wind and cape, boots skidding against concrete as the bat signal burned against the clouds. Commissioner James Gordon stood beside it, coat collar up, cigarette forgotten between his fingers. Batman stepped out of the shadows. "That light," Batman said, voice low, unreadable, "has a bat on it." Gordon didn't look surprised. He just nodded. "Figured you'd notice." "You want me to give you a phone number?" Gordon continued. "Might rethink my ways." Batman stared at the signal, then back at Gordon. "No," he said. "I like it." Gordon almost smiled. They stood there for a moment, Gotham stretching beneath them, sirens distant, rain threatening. Allies, if not friends. "I need your help," Gordon said. "We've got a case." Batman listened. Alfred Stryker, chemist, industrialist, one of Gotham's quieter power players. He and his business partners had been developing a new chemical compound, experimental, volatile, classified under enough shell companies to make it disappear on paper. 2 days ago, Stryker's partners turned up dead. No signs of forced entry, no robbery, just bodies and questions. "And Stryker?" Batman asked. "Missing," Gordon replied. "Or hiding. Same thing in this city." They found Stryker where men like him always ran, back to their work. The facility squatted at the edge of Gotham's industrial district, floodlights humming, guards pacing with nervous energy. Batman went in from above. Gordon went in through the front, badge out, gun ready. Batman dropped into the shadows like judgment. Thugs barely had time to scream before the darkness hit them. Arms bent the wrong way, weapons shattered. Men slammed into walls and stayed there. Batman moved through the plant with brutal precision, clearing a path as Gordon pushed deeper inside. "GCPD!" Gordon shouted. "Alfred Stryker! It's over!" Stryker ran. He burst into the main lab, eyes wild, suit rumpled, chemical stains splashed across his sleeves. Massive vats lined the room, bubbling with glowing liquid, the same compound that had cost his partners their lives. "You don't understand," Stryker shouted as Gordon raised his gun. "They were going to sell it, weaponize it. I tried to stop them." "By killing them?" Gordon demanded. Stryker backed away, breath hitching, foot slipping on a wet patch near the vats. "It was an accident, I swear." Batman appeared behind him like a nightmare. "Stryker," Batman said, "step away." Stryker turned too fast. His heel caught the edge of the platform. For a split second, all three men froze, Batman reaching out, Gordon shouting his name, Stryker's face locked in terror as gravity made the decision for him. He fell. The chemicals swallowed him whole in a violent splash, green light flaring as the vat churned and boiled. Stryker screamed once before the sound dissolved into bubbles and steam. Silence followed. Batman stood rigid, fists clenched, memories crashing back uninvited. Ace chemicals. The Red Hood. Another fall. Another failure. Gordon lowered his gun slowly, staring into the glowing vat. Jesus. Batman turned away first. Outside, sirens approached, red and blue washing over the factory walls. Gordon exhaled heavily, rubbing his face. "This city," he said quietly, "it doesn't forgive mistakes." Batman's voice came from the shadows. "Neither do I." He vanished into the night as the police arrived, leaving Gordon alone beneath the dying hum of machinery and the glow of a chemical that should never have existed. High above Gotham, the bat signal faded, but its meaning burned brighter than ever. The night was no longer alone. Green Arrow, the Emerald Archer #2, the Crumbler. Star City was coming apart at the seams. Not all at once, not with explosions or headlines. It crumbled quietly, brick by brick, beam by beam. Buildings failed inspections that had passed for decades. Overpasses cracked. Parking garages collapsed in the dead of night. Everyone blamed age or neglect. Oliver Queen knew better. He stood atop a half-condemned high-rise, emerald hood fluttering as he studied the street below. Yellow tape cordoned off another structural failure. 2 people injured. No fatalities, this time. A calling card had been left behind in the rubble. A small steel emblem stamped into the concrete, shaped like a broken column. The Crumbler. Subtle, Oliver muttered. Alexander Tuttle had once been one of the city's brightest minds. Structural engineer, urban planner, the kind of guy politicians loved until he started telling them the truth. That Star City was built cheap. That corners were cut. That lives were being gambled on profit margins. They fired him, blacklisted him, buried his reports. So Tuttle decided to make the city listen. Green Arrow moved fast, following fault lines only a professional would see. Old blueprints, canceled repairs, newly purchased demolition-grade tech bleeding into the black market. The Crumbler wasn't smashing things randomly. He was proving a point. The next collapse was scheduled. Green Arrow arrived at the waterfront parking structure just as the first support beam groaned. People were still inside. "Okay, Ollie," he said, already moving. "Hero first, lecture later." Arrows flew in rapid succession, grappling lines stabilizing weak points, explosive shafts detonating precisely to redirect stress, cable arrows reinforcing cracked pillars. He sprinted through the structure, shouting for civilians to run as concrete rained down around him. Then the ground shook. Alexander Tuttle stepped out from behind a reinforced truck, armored suit humming with vibration tech, gauntlets pulsing as they sent controlled seismic waves into the structure. "You're too late," Tuttle called. His voice echoed through the collapsing garage. "They ignored me. They laughed. Now they'll learn." Green Arrow landed on a beam above him. "You know, most people write angry letters." Tuttle snarled and slammed his gauntlets together. The beam beneath Oliver shattered, dropping him hard onto the concrete. The vibrations tore through the structure like a heartbeat gone wrong. They fought amid falling debris. Green Arrow adapted fast. Shock-dampening arrows, foam shafts that absorb vibration, precision shots that destabilized Tuttle's footing. Still, every punch from the Crumbler felt like getting hit by a jackhammer. "You're proving nothing," Oliver shouted as he dodged another shockwave. "You're just hurting people who already got screwed." "They're collateral," Tuttle roared. "The city is the target." Oliver fired a net arrow, wrapping Tuttle's legs, then followed with a concussive blast that knocked him flat. The structure groaned again, on the brink of total failure. "Yeah," Oliver said, hauling Tuttle up as sirens wailed in the distance. "Well, target missed." He cuffed Tuttle to a reinforced support and fired one last arrow to stabilize the garage long enough for emergency crews to arrive. As police dragged Alexander Tuttle away, screaming about foundations and lies, Green Arrow watched silently from above. Star City would repair the damage, issue statements, move on. But the cracks were still there. Oliver melted back into the skyline, bow over his shoulder, jaw set. Between vertigo-poisoning mines and men like the Crumbler tearing the city apart from below, Star City was being attacked on every level. And Green Arrow would be there, holding it together, one arrow at a time. Batman Gotham's Night #5, Ink in the Water. Gotham Harbor smelled like oil, salt, and secrets. Batman crouched on a rusted crane arm overlooking the docks, cape wrapped tight against the cold wind. Below him, floodlights cut harsh lines across the water, illuminating cargo containers stacked like gravestones. Penguin territory. Always had been, always would be, until it wasn't. Clement Karp was down there. They called him Squid, because he liked to drown people where no one could hear them scream. Because he left ink-black bruises and darker rumors in his wake. Because when Penguin needed someone silenced quietly, Squid was the one who slipped beneath the surface and never came back empty-handed. Batman watched him step out onto the pier, long coat flapping, fingers adorned with rings shaped like tentacles. Men flanked him, dock workers on paper, killers in practice. A shipment was being moved. Not guns, not drugs, cash. Cobblepot was consolidating. Batman dropped. The first guard went down into the water without a sound. The second hit the dock hard, air rushing from his lungs as Batman's boot connected. Shouts rang out. Guns came up, too late. Batman tore through them, a storm of fists and fear, shadows doing half the work for him. Men slipped on wet planks. One fired wildly and hit nothing but fog. Another ran. Squid didn't. Clement Carp smiled, slow and ugly, and reached into his coat. Black liquid sprayed across the dock, thick and blinding, splattering Batman's cowl and chest emblem. Always wondered if the Bat could swim, Squid said, backing toward the edge. Guess we'll find out. The dock exploded as something detonated beneath it. Planks shattered. Batman plunged into freezing black water, sinking fast as debris rained down around him. The harbor closed in. For a moment, there was only darkness. Thick, choking, familiar. Batman kicked free, cutting through tangled nets and ropes, emerging near the surface, just as Squid's men opened fire from above. Bullets tore into the water, white trails snapping past him. Batman vanished again. Squid leaned over the edge, peering into the murk. Told you, he muttered. Nobody wins against the... Batman surged up from beneath the dock and dragged Squid down by the ankle. Water swallowed the scream. They struggled below the surface, Squid clawing, panicking, hands slipping on Batman's armor. Batman held him there, eyes burning through the black water, just long enough for the message to sink in. Then he hauled Squid back up and slammed him onto the dock, coughing, sobbing, alive. Batman loomed over him. Penguin, Batman said. Routes. Money. Names. Squid laughed weakly, ink-stained teeth flashing. You think I talk? He wheezed. Cobblepot feeds my family. He buries my enemies. Batman leaned closer. He won't protect you from me. Something broke. Squid's laugh turned into a whimper. Warehouse 17, he gasped. Ledger's there. Names, payoffs, everything. Please. Sirens wailed in the distance. Batman bound Squid to a piling, leaving him drenched and shaking, the black water lapping at his boots. He retrieved a waterproof drive from Squid's coat and disappeared into the fog before the GCPD arrived. High above the harbor, Batman paused, staring out over Gotham's waters. Penguin was losing pieces now? Slowly, reluctantly but surely. Clement Carp had been one of his favorites, and the ink was finally starting to spread. Batman, Gotham's Night Number 6. Echoes in the Dark. The first burglary was written off as a mistake. Security footage showed a black shape moving through the building, fast, silent, impossible to focus on. Guards swore they saw a cape, a cowl, a bat. The second burglary made headlines. Batman turns on Gotham, vigilante or menace. Batman stood in the shadows of Crime Alley, watching the city argue with itself. He hadn't touched those buildings. He hadn't taken a thing. But Gotham didn't care about truth, only patterns. Jim Gordon did. You didn't do this, Gordon said over the phone, standing on a rain-soaked balcony at GCPD. It wasn't a question. No, Batman replied. Good, Jim said, because if you had, you'd have told me. The third burglary happened 2 nights later. Batman arrived while the alarm was still screaming. The place was wrecked. Vault torn open, concrete scored with deep claw marks, steel bent like soft tin. Batman crouched, running his fingers along the gouges. These weren't tools, they were teeth. A screech tore through the air, high, piercing, wrong. Batman looked up just in time to see it. A bat-shaped nightmare crashed through the skylight. It was massive, leathery wings spanning nearly 15 feet, claws raking, fangs bared in a face that was almost human. Almost. The creature slammed into Batman, sending both of them crashing through a display case. They fought hard and fast. Batman's armor absorbed brutal blows, but each strike carried frightening strength. The creature moved on instinct, sound guiding it more than sight. Sonic shrieks shattered glass. Batman countered with flashbangs and grapples, trying to ground it. The creature screamed again, then fled, wings tearing through the night sky. Batman stood amid the wreckage, chest heaving. It hadn't been stealing. It had been feeding. The next morning, Gotham had a new monster. Man-Bat terrorizes city. Batman ignored the noise and focused on what mattered. A shred of tissue clung to his gauntlet. Dark, leathery, still warm. DNA. Back in the Batcave, results came back fast. Human, male. Name, Dr. Kirk Langstrom. Wayne Enterprises, Bioacoustics Division. Brilliant, driven, married, former address listed as 1013 Parkthorne Avenue, Bloodhaven, before moving to Gotham for research funding. Batman watched security footage from Langstrom's lab. Vampire bat DNA. Human splicing. Experimental therapies aimed at curing cancer, restoring hearing. The notes were desperate. Rushed. Too rushed. He didn't mean to become this, Batman said to the empty cave. He synthesized a cure. The hunt took him to the old clock tower where Man-Bat nested, drawn to high places and open air. The creature attacked the moment Batman entered, shrieks rattling stone and steel. They fought among the gears, wings smashing against ancient machinery. Batman fired a sonic disruptor tuned to bat frequencies, staggering the creature just long enough to inject the serum. Man-Bat roared, then collapsed. Bones shifted, wings tore and retracted, fur fell away. When it was over, a naked, unconscious man lay on the cold stone floor. Kirk Langstrom lived. Francine Langstrom arrived minutes later, breathless, eyes wide with terror that turned into relief when she saw her husband breathing. She wrapped a coat around him, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved him." Batman watched from the shadows as she took Kirk home. Later, on a quiet rooftop, Jim Gordon lit a cigarette and exhaled slowly. "You could have brought him in," Jim said. "Why didn't you?" Batman looked out over Gotham. He didn't know what he was doing. Jim nodded, staring at the city. "This place," he muttered, "keeps getting crazier and crazier every day." Batman said nothing. He was already watching the sky, wondering what would come next.
And that's all for now.